Welcome back to Surviving in the Wild. This episode is going to be all about anxiety, social anxiety and OCD, and we're going to be covering different elements of that, about control, about things that people may do when they're anxious, but also trying to understand different ways that you can manage yourself. We're going to have Alex in, who is a children's wellbeing practitioner, and he's going to talk to us about different elements of it. He's been on the podcast before, so he's probably pretty accustomed to all this recording lark. But if you don't want to watch the whole video and you just want to jump to different parts of it, that's completely okay. And you may not want to watch any of it, but if you do want to find out where different support is in your area, you can go click on the link below and understand what you might be able to get involved with in terms of support, services, or just that greater understanding. But yeah, other than that, enjoy the episode. I hope it helps. Welcome back to Surviving in the Wild. On this episode of the podcast. It's not a podcast, it's a video, Chris. We've got Alex. Hello, Alex. How are you?
Good, Chris. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Just not done one of these in a while, I'm a man that likes wearing shorts, and so the fact I'm in trousers is annoying me.
I thought you'd have the touchable ones.
The little non-branded little zippers. No, they are quality though. I do enjoy them. Welcome back to Surviving in the Wild. We've got Alex on this episode today, and this one we're going to be talking all about anxiety. We're also going to be talking about a little bit about what Alex does, how he survives in the wild, and also looking back, why do we have anxiety? What does it feel like? How does it feel for different people? But also, how do we manage? What are the things that we can do? What can we implement ourselves so that we can actually start managing the situations where we do feel anxious? So yeah, hello Alex.
Hello.
What do you do? Who are you?
Well, human being.
Right, start human being. That's first base level.
Being. For work, what do I do for work? So I work with young people.
I do find that sometimes, you know, when you talk about it's like when you meet somebody for the first time. Me and Alex know each other, like anyway. But when you meet someone for the first time, you go, "Hiya, nice to meet you. What do you do for a job?" Like, it's such a why do we do that?
I don't know. It's the easiest one to go for, isn't it?
It's such a structure that we do.
But more interesting outside of it.
But in this respect, I am going to ask you, what do you do as a job and why are you here?
That makes sense, right? Yeah. So, I'm Alex. I work with children and young people between the ages of 5 and 18, employed by the NHS.
Right.
But I work with young people where we're kind of seeing newly emerging mental health difficulties, particularly around, as we mentioned there, anxiety.
Right.
We also talk around low mood, symptoms of OCD. So, let's say I work in, we call it like early intervention, which in kind of clear terms is where, as you say, when you might first start to experience difficulty around your mental health. So it's like the idea of when that first difficulty is starting, we can get in there quickly to support you with some evidence-based skills, strategies, to be able to manage those feelings, those big emotions better.
Right.
Thinking about how that works for you as well.
So it's that sort of thing. So I think I've mentioned it on the videos before. I don't know if it's nice that the sun's gone in. I felt too hot then for a second. Anyway, so when I first accessed sort of like support from the NHS was when I was like 16. Like the sort of work you do is like that first point of call, like trying to like work out what might be going on for that young person.
Yeah, so we might work, especially for younger people, as I say, kind of, I said there we can work with the age of 5 upwards. We might typically work more with the parent or carer involved for that young person, or yes, kind of upwards of to the age of 18, where we're, I say with early intervention, we'll do what we call a short-term intervention. When I say intervention, I mean doing sessions, talking, understanding what kind of the problem is for you at the moment, what you'd like some help with, and then us being able to give you some ideas, strategies, techniques from what we've discussed to help to be able to kind of work towards goals you might want to set in terms of your mental health. And when I say, short term, we might look at that being kind of typically around 6 to 12 sessions. So that might be up to kind of 50 minutes to an hour. on a one-to-one basis, or it might be kind of in a group setting too.
Right, okay. And if you are watching this, you are listening to this right now, and you want to try and access and understand what support is in your area, click on the link. These videos, all the videos on the social media, are going to be checked live with clinicians, and basically the whole idea of it is that we're going to link you back to the right resources, the right support, the right services that you can understand, that you can get support in your area. So if you don't want to listen to us witter on, that's absolutely okay. But yeah, we are going to talk about anxiety, and there'll be bookmarks. So if you want to listen to just like some grounding techniques or some breathing exercises that we're going to talk about later, you can skip forward to that. You don't have to listen to us all the way through, and that's okay. But if you do, welcome along for the journey. Enjoy the ride. Sit back, relax. Anxiety, right? What is it? I know.
Such a big question.
I know.
It's so different for everybody.
Okay.
But
why do we feel anxiety then? What is it that we feel? We're going to be talking about what it is. How is it that we feel it? Is it different for different people? And sort of like the physical sort of symptoms as well. But why do we feel anxiety?
I think the best place to start might be putting my biology teacher hat on, and I'm going to go.
You're not a biology teacher, though, are you?
Useless at it. I'm going to try. And I'll often say that to young people when I start. Kind of, we'll maybe speak a bit more after we've got to know you a bit better.
Yeah.
Of like some understanding about what anxiety is and how it first started. So I'm going to take you back. We're in modern day York, but we're going to take you back millions and millions of years ago.
Okay.
Okay. So if we were back millions of years ago, our brain still looks pretty similar in some ways to what it does today.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to think about that in a moment, but we'll keep that in mind. So if we were sat here millions and millions of years ago, yeah, York might be full of lots of different things. So we might have a few dinosaurs roaming around.
Nice.
I don't know if we have volcanoes in York. It's pretty flat.
The flattest. I mean, to be fair, the geography of it was probably a bit different to what it is now.
Right? Yeah, you'd think so. But if we were sat here right now having a conversation millions and millions of years ago, you know, we might say, as you say, there might be some dinosaurs, there might be some lions around in York. Okay. So if we were sat here and a lion was looking at us right now, and we were just chilling away, no problem at all in the world, yeah, what do you think might happen?
Probably get eaten by a lion.
The lion's coming for us, probably. Might be feeling a bit hungry.
I think the chances are the lion's going to win.
The easy prey, right? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to put up much of a fight against the lion.
Probably. It'll be a pretty difficult fight, especially if we're not particularly bothered about the lion being there.
Right.
So that's where kind of when we talk about human beings and that survival mode, yeah, we developed anxiety in essence to keep us safe. So let's say millions of years ago, and I'm going to use my hand as a bit of a model here. So if I'm hopefully making it clear for the camera, but I'll lean forward. So I'm going to represent this here as our brain.
Right.
Okay. Now, this is kind of the top part of our brain here, so where we see kind of a typical brain model, okay? And then kind of coming down here is our spinal cord and our brain stem, okay? So this is where a lot of the information will go between us and our body.
Right.
Okay, so that might be about things like remembering to breathe that we don't normally have to think about, and regulating our heartbeat, okay? But when our brain developed, okay, all this part of here is kind of the new things that have developed over the millions of years that we've been on this planet.
Okay. Things like
decision making,
imagination, creativity, stuff like that.
All the things that we do as human beings. But if we lift kind of the lid of our brain here, our thumb here, we'd call this our limbic system.
Okay.
So this is probably one of the most ancient parts of our brain. Okay. And within the limbic system, we have our threat system. Okay, so this is where anxiety kind of is generated from, the physical.
Where it stems from.
Where it stems from, right? Okay. So this was developed so that if we were sat here right now and there was a line across the floor, our threat system would be going off, a bit like an alarm going, we're not safe right now.
We need to get out.
We need to get out, right? Okay. And this is where some people may have heard of around the fight, flight, freeze response.
Yep.
Okay. So this part of our system in our brain here, so our limbic system will fire off to say we're not feeling safe. So that will cause kind of changes in our body that will help us to run away, to fight off the threat.
Good luck fighting a lion, but
or freeze. So we might see animals in modern, like where they might play dead as a survival mechanism.
Deer in the headlights sort of thing.
Yeah. So we've all of us as animals, human beings, have this threat system with us within our brains. Okay, so that's where if we see the lion, we might notice it and go, right, we need to run now. So our bodies will kind of supply blood and oxygen to our major muscles to help us to move. We might start breathing heavily, so we can bring in as much oxygen as we can to help supply our body with energy so that we've got the best chance to survive.
So we're talking about it in a very sort of, that, like you've just talked about, in a very sort of like physical sort of way. Like our brain, limbic, my short stubby fingers.
Yeah.
You've got the limbic, which is making us have this sort of like adrenaline and sort of like this fight, flight, freeze response. Why do we feel it then? Why do we think it's in our head then? So when we talk about anxiety, naturally, I always talk, you can talk about feeling uncomfortable, but it's always a thing that's kind of going on in our heads. It might be overthinking about a situation. Why is it then we kind of have a mental response to it as well?
Yeah, so that's really natural and understandable. So our thoughts are, how do we protect ourselves? So our thoughts tend to go a lot quicker and think a lot more about maybe the negatives of situations or what we can do to get out of it, because our brain is trying to keep us safe. And one thing I didn't mention there, but our limbic system, so as I say here, really isn't that much different to when we were in those times where we were, I say, Neanderthals or kind of first generation human beings. So that system hasn't particularly changed. But obviously the world around us right now, there is no lions roaming around in York today.
That we know of.
But our brain still responds in a really similar way. So it's having to adapt to kind of all these new changes when our brain is very similar. So that's where it can get things wrong.
Is that where like this top part of the brain then starts, is it over-analysing different things, over-analysing threats, so that because we've almost got cleverer, like, cleverer, is that a word? More clever? Yeah, let's go with it. We've started like over-analysing, we start having this response to things where we do feel uncomfortable because there isn't a lion, so we're seeing threats in different things almost.
But threats are different now.
Okay.
As you say, when we were in that time and a lion's there, it'd be pretty easy. We need to get out of there or something bad's going to happen. Whereas the social world we're in now, the modern world, is a lot more different. So those responses of being able to leave situations might actually end up not being helpful for us in the long term. And
we're going to come on to that in a bit. Like you said, we've got this like ancient part of our brain that is kind of having this response, but yet we get anxious and we feel anxiety for different things for different people. Why is that the case then? Why is that the situation at play?
Good question. So our brain, as I say, we all have very similar brains, but we all can experience anxiety differently. So one thing, we all experience anxiety here, but we can experience it different in terms of our brain might be, I might say the word more susceptible, but somebody might experience anxiety stronger than someone else.
Yeah.
It can come down to like biological things, it can come down to things that's happened in the past. But if we say that we all experience anxiety, but some of us can experience it, and if we can have a more sensitive response, so a heightened response to certain situations.
Is there a way that we can understand? Because I feel like the way that I've kind of understood my anxiety and things that I've struggled with is like getting in cars, paying for bills at a restaurant, certain things where I kind of really don't enjoy the situation. Because it's different for different people, how can we start to understand that?
I mean, just hearing from you there, Chris, it's really understandable things like if we're paying for things or we're getting into a car where we feel that things could go wrong, our threat system can be activated. So we go back to that limbic system, that can be activated.
The modern day lion.
Yeah. And I guess the way to think about the limbic system is almost like our body's fire alarm.
Right, okay.
So I'll use a bit of an example. example to explain maybe how our anxiety responses can differ.
Okay.
So, one thing we all have very similar brains, but we all can experience anxiety differently. So, if I think of a really common example that can happen, I'll ask you, Chris, have you ever had it where you maybe put some toast in the toaster in the mornings and you're doing something else and you hear the fire alarm go off?
I can tell you right now, my fire alarm goes off and our neighbours hate it because it goes off with the smallest whiff of burnt toast.
Right, okay, so kind of the smallest trigger as such, your fire alarm, and it's not particularly pleasant, is it, when that goes off?
No, it's a bit of a racket, and the dogs next door go a little bit crazy every time.
Okay, so you have this, so your fire alarm has this big response. Why does that fire alarm respond like that when your toast is in the toaster and it might start burning a bit?
Well, I'm guessing it's telling me that there's a potential danger.
Right.
Well, there's potential fire, which...
If the fire alarm had a brain, what would it be thinking?
Get out of the house.
Yeah, get out of the house. There's a fire, right?
Yeah.
What do we know when we walk down the stairs or come in from a different room and we see the toaster's burning?
We turn the toaster off and we go, it's actually not that bad.
Yeah, so it might be that we notice when we're in the situation, actually the toast has...
I just need to do this.
Yes,
in front of
a big tea towel there.
Yeah.
Trying to get away the smoke to stop that response from happening, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that fire alarm, whether there is a fire happening or not, if it's burnt toast,
okay,
will it respond in different ways?
No, it's just probably recognising that there's potential fire, so it's letting you know about it.
It's letting you know about the hazard. But it responds in the same way. It's not any quieter if it was the toast burn.
It's slightly burnt, so I'm going to go off a little bit.
Yeah, so it doesn't just do a little bit of a warning, it's the whole thing all at once, right? Yeah. So our body, as we go back to that limbic system, has a really similar response. And that's normal for all of us. So we will likely experience those really uncomfortable feelings, which we can talk a bit more about, whether that is kind of a situation where our body needs to be panicking, that we're in danger, because there's still, say, when we think about crossing the road, we'll look both ways. If we don't look both ways, our fire alarm's likely going to go off, and that's a really good thing to happen. That keeps us safe, because then we notice there's a car coming, we need to get out of the way.
Right.
That can happen when we don't have that.
I remember it was like I was in a really rogue one, and so I went travelling. I went to Vietnam. They crossed the road in a completely different manner. Don't they? You've just mentioned that. Like here, we look left, we look right to make sure there's not danger, so that we can cross the road. In Vietnam, you just walk across the road and you basically hope that they move out the way. Like all the mopeds and different stuff, you hope that they do. But you can feel that sense of anxiety when you're crossing the road, because you go, this is so just not normal for me. This is a different experience. So
in the world that you've grown up in and the experiences you've had, your threat system tells you we need to panic, which is a really good thing, right? It keeps us safe. But you can see then in different cultures and different ways of behaving that you're right. I'd expect your anxiety to be going at that point. I'd be which is a really adaptive thing, but anxiety at times cannot be as helpful. It can be different for other people. And
is that a good way of seeing it then? Like that's culturally the difference. But then we can see it within ourselves and say, for me, I feel anxious getting in car, not so much anymore, but getting there. Whereas for you, it might not be, and that's where there's the differences in terms of our upbringing and different stuff. But we're still reacting. Our brain is still reacting in the same way.
Yeah. So it kind of when other people might say to us, where it is unhelpful, where someone might say, get over it. It's only this. It's only that. Actually, our fire alarm is reacting as strong as theirs might be for different things. So even though anxiety is trying to protect us, it can feel really, really uncomfortable.
Because of that, I mean, I've had panic attacks before, and I've really struggled with my anxiety and different elements, even recently, even with work and sending emails. I've got more anxious recently, and I think should we be scared of the anxiety? Because I always think it's a really uncomfortable feeling. But you're saying here that this response is actually trying to keep us safe. How do we kind of try to understand that?
I think that's really tricky, because So that's everything in your body, everything that's with you at that moment is telling you that you're not safe.
Yeah.
Even though your brain might be saying, hold on, I'm sending an email. Like, when we're feeling more anxious, we might notice that those physical feelings or those thoughts, as you say, certain emotions that might happen, still feel just as strong. Mm-hmm. What I'd say is anxiety, even though it feels really harmful, it is trying to protect us.
Okay.
And it's trying to make us uncomfortable because that fight-flight response, fight-flight freeze, sorry, is kicking off, and it's saying that we don't feel safe here right now. It's trying to protect us. But sometimes our brain can get that wrong.
What are the factors that kind of encompass it?
It's interesting because what might be the typical things you think about physically that can happen to you when you feel anxious?
When I feel anxious, so for me, there's a couple of different ones. I sometimes disassociate, and I think is that your freeze element? Like I kind of zone out.
Stuck in that moment as such, and feel less connected with things around you. Yeah.
But then there's other times where I can feel my heart going. I can feel like a bit shaky, a bit like scatty, a bit like, and then also going to the toilet, like needing to go to the toilet. I don't know if that's sometimes because I actually need the toilet or whether actually because I need to get out of the situation I'm in or feel like I need to get out of the situation I'm in.
Yeah. I think all of those we'll talk a bit more about, but you particularly say about going to the toilet. Yeah. That's one where I speak to young people and they'll go, really? Is that something that is something around anxiety? So we would, again, sorry, put my biology hat back on, but...
This is going to be a video of metaphors, I feel.
It is, yes, it is.
I love a metaphor. If you've watched the Stigma episode, I think we've talked about eating mayo out of a mayonnaise pot as stigma, but you can go back and watch that anyway.
So... when you say about going to the toilet, though, feeling the need to.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned there about your heart will you'll feel like it goes quicker.
Yeah.
So physically, our body is responding to that threat by pumping more blood to the muscles and the organ which need it in that moment. Okay, so that's particularly the ones like our lungs and our big muscles like our leg muscles or... kind of like things that we need to be able to run away.
Run away from the tiger, run away from the lion.
Yeah. So what can happen then is to those kind of other areas, so particularly like our stomach or our bladder, okay, blood is going away from those areas. So it can cause the muscles of our bladder tend to relax, which can then kind of lead to that feeling of needing to go to the toilet. Or a typical one you might talk about is kind of having a stomach pain, or you might hear it called a worry tummy. And that, again, is where our blood is coming away from kind of our digestive system, which our digestive system is then going, hey, what's going on? Like, this is
hey, what's going on here, bro?
So it's kind of going, it's responding to that. And that's why we can say we feel that pain or that uncomfortableness. So I think it's really helpful to know that at times, as like we don't really think about why am I having that, and actually it's a really normal thing. Our body is trying to keep us safe but can make it feel really uncomfortable.
I guess with that, I guess what we're saying is that it's not every time that you have a stomach issue or you might have eaten something a bit dodgy, or you might actually but anxiety can be kind of come about in different ways for different people. And I know for me, sometimes I need to ask myself, have I drank a bit too much milk and eaten a bit too much cheese versus am I actually anxious in this situation? Is there an element of where it's trying to understand what are your sort of reactions to that anxiety?
Yeah. And I think it's being able to, like, when you notice that you're feeling anxious, kind of asking yourself those questions, like, what are the things that change for me? Because again, there's some other ones we haven't spoke about there which you might not typically associate with anxiety. Yes.
Sneezing one? Probably not.
Maybe.
For today.
Maybe. But like one that I might think of is we can sometimes notice we get a dry mouth. So it can be more difficult to talk because we feel like we're not getting our words out right, because our saliva in our mouths typically, let's say, go away, like when our mouths get dry. Said there about kind of hands shaking or feeling sweaty. The shaking, as I say, where we're building up energy to get out of that situation. But we actually can't get out of that situation. Our energy doesn't know where to go. Does that make sense?
Wait, yeah, it does, because like sometimes you're pent up sort of like angst almost of like, I don't know, if you're, I don't know, say you're in school and you're in a lesson that you don't really like, you're already feeling a bit anxious about it, and then you get asked a question about something, and you know you can't leave the lesson because that's not what you do. Like, you're not allowed to leave the lesson or whatever. You can start, like, you might be getting that adrenaline. So what is it that you're doing to try and get out of that situation, and where is that sort of energy and that adrenaline going? It might turn into you freeze, where you just kind of stop and you zone out and you're not kind of with it, or you might go into that sort of like, you might start acting out. You might start, because that's your response, your release almost. I don't know.
So that's our threat system then telling us we don't feel safe. And in that particular situation, you say if you're not able to leave a classroom, then we feel like we don't feel safe and we can't leave, where we can't use that fight, flight, freeze response. So rather than being able to get out of that situation, we're feeling really uncomfortable with all those physical feelings, and maybe, as you say, where our thoughts might be racing more. So it makes sense to why, when people say, you know, I feel really anxious in that situation and it feels really uncomfortable, that's our body trying to protect us, and it's perfectly normal. But what we'll go on to talk about is maybe where anxiety can become a problem, where it can be maintained by that.
Okay, that's what we'll go on to then. When it comes to then anxiety, so something that I've always done around, say, paying for bills in a restaurant, that's a classic one which I've talked about on the podcast and different stuff before, is that I get out of the situation and I leave the restaurant and I pay somebody after, and that's a way that I've managed it. Is sometimes doing that always, is that a good thing to do, or avoiding that situation, is that good, or is it what? Because for me in that situation, I've avoided it and I feel better because of it. Is that always the case?
So first of all, it makes sense to why you avoid that, because, as you said, your threat system is then going off, okay, and you're feeling that panic, and you might think, you know, a typical thought might be, you know, I might not give them the right amount of money, I might not say the right things to that person. Really common thoughts we can have.
Are we splitting the bill? Are we not splitting the bill?
So normal. And when then kind of that avoidance, so when you leave that situation, how do you feel afterwards?
I know that I feel I'm out of the situation and I feel better because of it, because I've almost, like, that anxiety's dropped.
How does your body feel?
More relaxed.
More relaxed, yeah. So what physical feelings might you get when you're in that situation, when it's kind of coming to that point where you know you're going to have to pay the bill?
Just, I feel uncomfortable and I feel a bit more shaky, and I start overthinking and racing.
Okay. So we know that threat system's gone off there.
Yeah.
And so when you avoid the situation, it sounds like that anxiety, that threat response has now dropped quite a lot for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If you then had to do it the next day, how do you feel? Would any situation change if you're in that situation again?
Probably not.
No. Why do you think that?
Because I've left the situation.
Yeah.
And I know that that's the way that I've got out of it.
And I guess if you had those anxious thoughts maybe beforehand of, okay, I might not respond in the right way, I might say something wrong, and something bad might happen, I guess, do those expectations change?
No, probably not. Does that then create a situation where sometimes avoiding it then actually doesn't change anything for the benefit? Like, it doesn't, for the better?
If we're going to talk, we say maybe like if I was to do a session with somebody, we think about the vicious cycle of anxiety.
Right.
So think at the top, we have that anxiety response is happening, that threat response. So you say around kind of uncomfortable thoughts, uncomfortable emotions, physical reactions to that situation, all differ for different people. When we then have that thought, as you say, I'm wanting to avoid this situation, I want to come out of it. So it might be physically leaving the scene, leaving that situation. It might be, if I found it difficult to talk to you right now, I might choose to not make eye contact. Things that can help me to feel safer in that moment. Yeah. So then we see that kind of avoidance, and we often experience that short-term relief.
So I'm up here, and I left the situation and my anxiety's dropped.
Can drop down. Yeah.
But then next time I'm in it,
yeah, exactly.
I'm up again.
So over time, we then build up that anxiety that we've learned that kind of that short-term relief, we use it as a bit of a strategy to get out of that. But if you needed to do it again in the future, or wanted to do something, if you're then coming to different situations where those thoughts might come up, you might say something wrong or something bad might happen. Our body has learned to avoid that situation, but that might stop us from doing things that we want to do.
Yeah.
Maybe going to explore some interests or where that situation might come up again.
So I don't want to say right that wrong, but how do we change that sort of like short-term relief into like a more of a long-term benefit?
Yeah. So for your particular example there, we're saying that your threat system is activating.
Yep.
And it's turning on at that point, which you are then thinking something bad might happen. As you say, it might be they might not respond back in the right way, might say something silly, right? So the way in which we would think about how to reduce anxiety over time, and again, this is something we'd speak more about in sessions if we were working particularly around anxiety, this idea of habituation.
Okay. Habituation, habits. I don't know what it means, but go on, tell me what habituation means.
The kind of most accessible way to say it's kind of that idea of getting used to something and retraining our anxiety to hopefully feel more comfortable in those situations where it's becoming more problematic. You say, so if you're in that situation where you feel unable to stay there in that way, we'd look at ways of how we could make that situation feel more normal for you.
Feel more manageable. What is it?
Manageable.
I guess sometimes with anxiety as well, is it a little bit of that recognition, that understanding around what your certain triggers are and what can you do in that situation?
I find what some young people say to me is sometimes knowing that actually this really uncomfortable feeling that's happening is perfectly normal is a really helpful first bit in terms of we know that nothing bad physically is going to happen to us. We know we're experiencing that and how distressing that is to experience. Habituation, they say habit, is about when we can stay in that situation where we feel anxious rather than leaving the situation, so avoiding, to stay there and let our anxiety naturally come down over time can then allow us to maybe challenge some of those thoughts. So if you had that thought of you were going to say something silly to a waitress, to be able to kind of see actually what happens and challenge that, which I know is a really tricky thing, and we wouldn't say to go away and do it. Maybe doing it alongside somebody who can help you to do that and plan in a way, kind of taking little steps towards that. But the idea is the longer we can stay in the situation, our anxiety will naturally come down.
And we're going to come on to ways in which we can do that in a minute. But in terms of then when you're working with someone, with a young person over a period of time, so obviously like we have our drop-ins and stuff and we use it as a very sort of like listening. You can use it as a bit of a distraction, a bit of plays, a bit of signposting and stuff like that. How would you then like work with somebody who, would it be very similar sort of thing? Is it like I'm telling you this is a situation I feel uncomfortable and then we would try and put things in place? How would that work?
So like thinking about what might sessions look like for a young person. Yeah. So our kind of early intervention, so we use cognitive behavioural therapy informed techniques and strategies. So cognitive behavioural therapy, CBT. Cognitive,
brain, behavioural, what you do, therapy,
support. The links, we've been talking a lot about that threat system, so our physical feelings, our thoughts, our emotions. So CBT looks at how our thoughts, our feelings, emotions, our physical feelings and our behaviours all linked together,
right?
And think about how they work for us in cycles. And sometimes our anxiety can develop when cycles are unhelpful, like the vicious cycle of anxiety I mentioned before.
Yeah.
So we work using that, but how kind of program of support might look like is first of all meeting somebody and asking them questions, getting to understand what they'd like help with. Yeah. And typically we would use maybe like some questionnaires, we call them outcome measures, to understand the problem a bit better. We also set goals, so to think about what somebody would like to work towards, because it's important to think about actually what's important for you and what would be best for you.
So it's a lot about getting to know that person in the first instance, which, I mean, talking about anxiety and anxious situations, you work with people for, what you say, up to 12 sort of weeks and stuff, and that first session is going to be anxiety induced. It's going to be, you're going to feel that sort of, them feelings of, I don't want to do it, uncomfortable, it's something new, and you're probably going to have a little bit of a threat response to that even.
I would say that would be really normal to happen. And for every young person that come in to speak to us, have a real amount of respect and the ability to be able to manage that experience, that distress, because understandably, like maybe waiting before that first appointment, meeting somebody new, is a really scary thing.
Just in terms of talking about that, like habituation, it's kind of just made me think, the first time I spoke to somebody was from school, really, really tricky. I just kind of bursted. And then when I was having sessions, first few sessions, like I found them really hard. 10 years on, I am working in a mental health organisation, and I'm ridiculously open about mental health, and I'm very open about talking to a counsellor or talking to a therapist or whatever it is. Is that somewhat that habituation in action? Is like the longer I've kind of stayed in that situation, I've got used to it. I've got used to the feelings of, oh, I know this actually helps me. I know it's uncomfortable at first, but actually over time that's helped me kind of get used to it. Is that an example?
Yeah, a really good example. And full credit to you to be able to put yourself in that situation.
Thanks, Alex.
It's not easy.
No, it's not.
Talk to other people about that, but as you say, the more you do it, you tend to find the more you might get used to something. So say like sessions, you say you get used to then where you go to, what you're going to talk about. Same with anxiety. If we do things where we're doing those things we feel anxious about, the more we do it, the more we get used to understanding what will actually happen, because our brain can often paint this picture of these awful things that might happen, kind of those worst case scenarios. Mm-hmm. So with habituation, when we're staying in the situation, one, we can see if that worst case scenario happens or not. So our brain will often jump to that. Mm-hmm. Second part is, actually, if we feel like a bad thing has happened, that thing we really dreaded, how well we cope with it. And what we typically tend to do with anxiety is underestimate how well we can cope with things. Mm-hmm. Which is a really normal thing. That's our brain trying to protect us. That's what we are as human beings physically trying to do. Protect ourselves.
And it's that anxiety of going back to that response of, after 3 weeks in Vietnam, I was able to walk across the road without the anxiety because I got used to it. Whereas in that first instance, it was really hard.
Because you're learning. Because
learning how to do it. Struggling with your mental health and what have you, and it's hard, and the way that we manage is going to be different for different people. When after sessions, after things you've talked about, goals and different reviews, is there things that are you trying to work with that young person to try and get them to kind of go off and practice these things? Is it practice it once, practice it twice, and then come to next session, see how I feel, or is it different for people?
Sure. So we spoke a bit there about maybe what the first few sessions might look like, getting to understand you more, and we do something called formulation, which we might think about. Best way to describe it is, when you might have a maths test, mm-hmm. and Chris has got a certain amount of apples.
Chris has got 442 apples.
Yeah, and we'll use formulas to help work out how we solve this problem. So it's a bit like we're doing we use kind of problem solving to understand how this problem is affecting you, to understand that in more detail. Okay, so understanding why this might be happening is those next sessions, or what sessions might look more like, is we'd still want to know more about what's happening for you and understand more, but we'd then start introducing some things to go away and practice, or things to read about. So I often say kind of the most important work happens outside of the session. Mm-hmm. It's about going away and putting these things in place, which, I'll be honest, does feel it can be difficult at times. It feels like extra homework, which, if you're already busy and you've got a lot going on, can be really tricky. So it's important to think about when's the right time for you as well. But to kind of get the biggest impact, going away and putting these things in place. And we said about practice there, that is one of the key parts. So we're surviving the world today. We've got our camp chairs. Honestly,
I'm in between putting my jumper back on because it's that cold, it's that vicious out here.
And we might have a tent with our camp chairs, right? That's a good bit of for how I might use for practicing new skills. So if you were to go buy a new tent or get a tent off somebody.
I'm actually going to buy a new tent from Decathlon very soon, and other retailers are available.
Yeah. When might you first put that tent up?
In the pouring down rain, in the middle of a snowstorm. No, I wouldn't do that.
Because if you do that, right, you might not know where the poles go or where I need to peg this down, and we've already got a really blustery, windy situation out there, which is really difficult to do that.
Yeah.
So what you might typically do, maybe this is different for you than other people.
No.
You might put it up in the back garden or put it up in a field. Take your time, work out where the poles go, where to put the pegs.
There is nothing worse than trying to work out how to put a tent up and it is peeing it down. Like, it is, you're just getting soaked. You don't know which is the inner, which is the outer, where are the poles going. Whereas actually, if you put the tent up before in the garden, at least you have a little bit of an idea of what to do when the situation's stressful.
Yeah, so when then it's kind of more automatic, you know what helps as well. So you know that actually putting that bit of the tent up first before using that, you've got more knowledge. Mm-hmm. So if we think about then maybe talking about techniques how to manage anxiety, so we might say to go away and practice this when you're not feeling anxious, to kind of get a feel of it, whether that feels right for you, because some strategies might work more than others. Mm-hmm. So that when you might then experience that anxious situation or kind of that stress is increased, it's more automatic. You don't have to think as much about, do I do this, do I do that? We practice that first so you can then use it in those situations.
I guess when we talk about anxiety and things, it is that thing of when you first ride on a bike, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know, do you start pedalling straight away? What do you do? Do you sit down? Do you stand up? Do you whatever? But then over time, it becomes natural to you. Like, one of the things that, like, for me, I've always found really sort of helpful is, like, I know in certain situations when I am feeling stressed, when I am feeling anxious, when everything does feel overwhelming, I say to my partner, just tell me to go for a walk, tell me to get out, and tell me to, like, and I know sometimes it's different depending on anxiety, depression, low mood, whatever it is that you're dealing with, and you have to have different strategies for different things. But sometimes I know that in my head, if I go for a walk, it's going to make me feel better. I know that instinctively now, I just kind of go do it. Whereas at the time when I'm really under the cosh and don't know what's going on, I didn't know that was just something that was simple for me that I could do. And it's just, how do we train our brains to do that? And
you spoke there about having other people around you to help as well. That's really important. Because these are, a really difficult feelings to experience. Sometimes having other people around that can
just to
help.
Prompt you.
Yeah. And in those times in sessions, what we might look at, we call using our metaphors, but building a toolbox of strategies, techniques, things that you do to help your mental health, your well-being, so that after those sessions, you've got them to take away, so you can use in those situations and know how best to use them.
Go on then, let's do it. So, anxiety, what are some things that we can use around sort of, I'm in a situation and let's stick with the restaurant. We just had a lovely meal. It's really nice. I've really enjoyed myself, but I know the bill, the check, the discussions around how we pay is coming up. What could I do in that situation?
So your kind of threat response are heightening. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll start with, people might typically associate, a lot of people say, do some deep breathing. Yeah. Which I can really appreciate at times. If we're not using that right, can feel really frustrating. It's like, hold on, I'm feeling all this emotion. This doesn't feel right.
Tell me to breathe. Yes.
Yeah. So we'll go for it is a breathing technique, but we'll talk a bit more about how we use it.
Why does deep breathing help? Why do breathing techniques help for a start? Let's understand the why.
So if we think about, as we say there, when our threat response is heightened, we might start breathing quickly, but we'll find that's typically quite shallow as well. So we're trying to get in all that oxygen, okay? If we help to slow down our breathing, to take in kind of those meaningful deep breaths, we are, in a way, overriding our body system to help to calm down our heart rate, help to calm down our breathing rates. So then we're getting less kind of oxygen going into our body, so in a way that it helps us to relax. So we're trying to change that kind of physical effect
Yeah.
to slow that down. So we're doing the opposite of what our body's trying to tell us to do.
Yeah.
When we're in a situation where we know actually we're feeling that anxiety, our threat's has risen,
Yeah.
but we want to be able to stay in that situation to be able to challenge that anxiety.
Okay. Breathing. What we're doing.
So,
I'm going to put a little thingy on the screen so you can do it with us if you want.
Great.
And see how you feel after. You might not be anxious watching this. You might just be like really relaxed. Who knows?
So there's one that we use in sessions and get people to go away and use is called box breathing.
Okay.
Have you heard of this?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So this might be one you hear of before and things that people can discuss, but I want to talk about, I guess, really think about how we practice it and use it well. Okay.
Going back to that stuff of if we practice it, it becomes natural when we do feel anxious that we can use this sort of stuff again.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So what I often say to people is, and I'll say to you, can you notice, say, 3 things around you which are a 4-sided shape? So it might be a rectangle, might be a square.
Plant pot.
Yeah. So you can see the front of the plant pot. Yeah.
Table.
Table.
A paracetamol tablet packet over there.
Okay. Yeah. So there's lots of different. We often find there's lots of different 4-sided shapes around us. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, why I ask that question is so when we think of different situations we might be. So typical one might be in a school lesson, in a classroom lesson you mentioned before.
Yeah.
You know.
You got your books.
Whiteboard, books. Yeah. If we're out and about in public, it might be a window that we see. So this one's quite a useful one for saying, right, where is a 4-sided shape that I can see?
Okay.
Okay. So if I was to trace around it, so we're starting right at the top here. Start at the top. So you breathe in for 4 seconds.
Let's do it. Let's do it here. Let's do this one. Oh,
Yeah.
that's quite a.
It's a big one, isn't
That's
it?
a big rectangle. Do 2 seconds. I've got a notebook that looks like it's got Chinese dropped all over it.
Oh dear. That's just, isn't it? Okay,
Right.
so we've got a notebook here.
Yep.
Okay. So if you were to start at that top corner here, okay?
Yep.
So when we're looking at that square, we breathe in through our nose and try and count to 4. Hold our breath for 4 seconds. Out through our mouth. 4 seconds, and then hold in again for 4 seconds.
Right. Okay. So then, right. Let's do it again. I'm going to put it on screen now. 3, 2, 1.
4. 4. 4. Okay.
And how many times would you do that round?
So that's where sometimes we say, oh, we'll do it a few times. Actually, probably need to do it quite a while. So I can sometimes recommend up to kind of 5 to 15 minutes sometimes.
Right. Okay.
And obviously when we've done that there, it's very obvious what we're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. But you can do that quite discreetly in terms of, say that and pause. Breathing up through your nose, holding. Breathing.
Because I've heard box breathing before. I've never. I know, and obviously it's because it's 4, 4, 4, 4. But that visual element of actually seeing something square and almost looking at tracing it is. I'm just looking at the bricks now. It's quite a nice way of going. Actually, you can focus on something like visually as well. Sometimes I think when we look at, when we talk about breathing, it's like deep breathing. How do I do it? But if you've got something to focus on, that might allow you to actually just concentrate on that thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So it helps us to stay in that situation at points that's feeling really distressing.
Okay.
Focus on something, and you have to ask yourself that question: can we see a 4-sided shape? Which my hope would be we would find quite often in certain situations. Also, there. I say around using it 4 seconds, but the more and more you practice those things, the more you can make it work for you. So you might find doing it for shorter periods of time in terms of breathing around maybe 3 seconds or longer. Finding how long that would take for you. So again, when we come up to that, when we said around putting a tent up, where we practice that first, you know, maybe if there's a space, if you're at school, like after school, putting that in, like practicing it in a safe space for you, or trying it out in different situations before hopefully needing to use it in that situation. You become more familiar with the technique, and you can work out whether that feels right for you.
Because things like this, like it might, you you've got to tailor it to you as well, haven't you? Certain things work differently for certain people, and understanding that why and understanding that actually reducing that pressure on the limbic nerve, doing the opposite of what it is that we were talking about in terms of physiological stuff that's going on, is really important to understand that why. Because if you just say, I'll just go breathe, it doesn't really, I'm breathing right now and I'm still feeling anxious. But understanding that breathing slower, holding, breathing out through your mouth, in through your nose, that sort of stuff, can really just kind of make you understand, okay, this is why I'm doing it. But like I said, it might not work for you. You might not want to use different sort of techniques. Like what we might do is like grounding techniques. Go on, talk us through a grounding technique.
So grounding technique, what we're trying to do, so grounding in kind of in a simple explanation is when we're in a situation that our threat is heightened, we want to try and feel safer in that environment we're in. We use a grounding technique to help us to feel more grounded in our environment, so feeling more relaxed,
a bit more present, a bit more.
Yeah. So this is not working as such on where we've talked about our physical response, but maybe when our thoughts are really racing, and this is helping us to. We say distract. I wouldn't say distract too much because we're not wanting to distract ourselves in anxiety-provoking situations because that could end up being avoidance, but helping us to feel more grounded in that situation so we can stay there.
Feeling that calm, feeling that making it manageable.
Yeah. So it might be it's something that we use to help us to feel more calm and grounded in that situation. But so I've got one. So one really common one we use is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. So this might be a helpful one to go away, look up, and because it can be difficult to remember all the kind of.
I was going to say I've worked in mental health and I always forget them.
Yeah, exactly. So it could be good one to go away and look up and like write down on your phone or have on a note so you've got it to reference to because it is difficult to remember. But should we have a bit of a through now?
Let's go for it.
So we'll say it out loud, but I'll kind of talk you through it. Okay. So I want you to look around the environment you're in now. Okay. So not just in front of you, around everything. We've got quite a colourful, busy environment here today.
Chaos.
But can you notice 5 things that you can see?
A phone where people are hopefully watching us.
Yeah.
Plants.
Yeah.
The sun.
Yeah.
A tree, a barbecue. Yeah, that's 5.
That's 5. Yes, you notice all these different things. Can you notice 4 things around that you can touch?
Fidget spinner.
Yeah.
My shoe.
Yeah.
The ground.
Yeah.
My hat.
Yeah. So when you're doing that, you don't actually have to touch it. But for our example today, it's like we might touch it, but it's noticing things around you that you can touch. Okay.
Yep.
Now, 3 things that you can hear.
I can hear the traffic.
Yeah.
I can hear a beeping. Sounds like a delivery van reversing. And I can hear the little thing knocking off the little bird cage, knocking off the.
Yeah. So you've noticed a bit more about those different sounds that are around us. Okay. Now, 2 things that you can smell, or they might be, if you're struggling to smell something.
I was going to say my hay fever is pretty rough at the moment, so I can smell pollen. No. I can't smell anything.
Okay.
Is there anything else I can do other than 2 for smells?
You can think about kind of favourite smells that you like. So I always think back to like a fresh bakery, what those smells might be. Trying to read.
A French boulangerie. Oh, lovely fresh baked. Sounds a bit bougie that. It's just a bakery. Yeah, like fresh bread and.
Fresh grass might be a good example.
Not with my hay fever. I can't smell.
Sorry, there we go. Individual.
Yeah, different for different people. Sunday dinner. Do you know when you, as a kid, and like got a Sunday dinner on, and you know, sublime.
Yeah. Okay. And then kind of the last one you can do in a couple of different ways, but today we'll use it as kind of using one big deep breath. Okay, so where we can breathe in through the nose.
With that thing, with them sort of ground technique, it's thinking about them different things, isn't it? Rather than I've completely forgot why I was even doing that grounding technique then for a second. In that grounding technique, I'm doing that grounding technique in that restaurant where actually I might be feeling stressed. If you slow yourself down and you just kind of recognise them things, them 5 things you can see, the 4 things you can touch, the 3 things you can hear, 2 things that you might smell in a restaurant, and then that deep breath. I've completely forgotten that actually it was in the restaurant, even in that hypothetical example. So I think what we do when we do them sort of things is, it might not work for you. There's lots of different of these techniques that are out there that you might just want to do the first 3 things and then repeat them and find 5 more things, or 4 more things that you can touch, or 3 more things you can hit. Repeating them things and working out actually these little things might help you, might just allow you to kind of go, that situation wasn't so terrible, and you've managed to stay in it.
It's a really good example there where we talk about making it your own, personalise it, working out what works best for you. And you're right, it's going to vary, depend on person to person how effective they find that. It's about finding the ones that work right for you. And it might not take all of that anxiety away, as we spoke about. It's a really strong physical emotion that can happen for us. But my hope is what we're saying about that is helping us to stay in that situation rather than trying to avoid it.
So then hopefully the next time you're in a similar situation or something where that anxiety is really high, you can manage it, and over time you can actually start to deal with them situations.
Yeah, you might find then you don't need to use those techniques as much as you're getting more used to what's happening. And we spoke there about kind of the more we stay in the situation, we have the ability to see if that bad thing we feel is going to happen is as likely to happen as we may feel. Because again, when we're feeling anxious, we're likely to feel that it's more likely to happen.
Yeah.
And if those bad things do happen, so like if we stumble over our words, if we're paying for a bill, how well we're able to cope with it.
And also, I think there's an element of sometimes recognising, sometimes it won't work every time as well. It might take you might go to a cafe, restaurant 4, 5, 6 times in a row, and only once you might be able to stay in it. Once is better than none. It's building on that. Okay, and for the next time, let's try again. Let's stay a little bit longer. Like, these are incremental changes, aren't they? They're not, it has to be everything perfect all at once. It's what can we build on, I guess.
Doing what's right for you at the speed that feels right, because we appreciate doing change and doing things that is going to activate that threat system is a really difficult thing to do. So doing it at the right speed, but if you're wanting to kind of, you feel like that work would be helpful, then reach out for that support, because it can be really helpful doing that alongside somebody who can support you as well.
And that could be a friend. It's like I always talk about, do you know when you were like revising for exams and stuff, like one of the best ways to ever learn something was, I always used to tell like an inanimate object. So there used to be a little figurine, a little Lego figurine on my desk, and I used to try and teach like this little figurine philosophy. And you can do that, like if you've got an old teddy, your dog, it doesn't have to necessarily be a human. You can try and work it through with them, like, and it gives that understanding of actually, okay, this has worked for me in this situation. Can I teach it and can I practice it and go from there? Alex, how do you survive in the wild? If you're okay, what are the things that you do? What are the things that you have practiced over time? What are the ways that you've survived in the wild that keep your mental health healthy?
Because it is important, absolutely, to think about where...
Because you're a real human.
I'm a real human. I talk a lot about this, but I also feel all of this too. I've learned about it, but at the same time, I also experience it as being a human being. You spoke there about your kind of management strategies about getting out on a walk. For me, I've always really enjoyed sport and activity. So I enjoy spending more time at the activities that I like to do and enjoying being around that. So sometimes that might be sport, sometimes that might be being more restful, so having a bit of time watching the television. What would you be watching? What's on the telly? What would you be relaxing to? Yeah, see, people would probably say I'd still be watching sport. It's sport. Yeah. But maybe like some drama, maybe like some thriller as well, where I can really get into it. Some gritty northeastern drama. I mean, we had. So yeah, I think it's learning about when like maybe when you need some downtime, some relaxation time, or when you might want to do more activities to get yourself out there. Again, this is something that's going to be really individual for everybody, but I always like to think about, right, how am I feeling right now? So asking those questions, we're asking a lot of ourselves today of, am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling maybe sad?
Do you do that yourself?
Yeah. I think a really good way to do it is, so I do these check-ins, and they're called the 3 T's. Okay. So I ask myself questions at the 3 T points. So we've drunk coffee today. When I go and make myself a cup of tea or a coffee, I'll ask myself the question, how am I feeling right now? When I go to the loo, so when I go to the toilet, okay, because these are all points during the day where we can check in with ourselves. So when I go to the toilet, how am I feeling right now? Am I feeling stressed? Am I feeling anxious? Worried about things? And the other T being travel. So when I'm travelling,
I've not heard this one before.
So if it's like going between a lesson, if it's going between different places at work, I'll intentionally ask, how am I feeling right now? So these little check-in points throughout the day, because naturally when we're really busy and we're doing lots of things, less likely to ask yourself those questions. So I try and remember the 3 T's.
I like that. I've not heard that one before. I enjoy that. Alex, thank you very much for coming on. Hopefully you've either understood a little bit about grounding techniques and breathing, or you've understood a little bit more about potentially history and the environmental factors, physiological, evolutionary, why are they all hard words, around anxiety. But ultimately, if you are watching this, we want you to get support and understand this. You might have got that support from this video, you might understand that, or you might have asked yourself a question of, actually, how are you feeling today? What is it that helps me? But ultimately, we want you to find that support. So that's why we've got the links below. We've got all the other videos and all the different websites in different areas of Yorkshire and North Yorkshire and Humber. But no, thank you for Alex for coming and giving us some debriefs on anxiety, what it feels like, as well as some of your own experiences. But if you haven't watched any of the other videos, go listen to them now. But I'm probably going to go say that in the little outro, which I do in a second, which I recorded yesterday. So yeah, anyway, cheers Alex.
Thank you.
Hope you found some value in that, whatever we've just dribbled on about for the last 45 minutes or whatever. But ultimately, like I said, it's all about finding you the support. So that's why the link is below. You can go click on it, or you might have the other videos flying around at some point here. But as the thing that YouTubers, people say, like, share and subscribe. But ultimately, pass it on to a friend, pass it on to a family member, pass it on to someone that you might know that's struggling, because ultimately we're out here just trying to help other people, and we're not trying to sell you anything, we're not trying to get anything out of it other than bettering mental health for young people and the people that support them. So if you can do that, then great. Thanks guys.